What makes Dave a good angler? I mean, it has to be his determination and energy levels. He just keeps going and going and going.
Look at that. We've got a couple of days perch fishing in the valley. I couldn't help myself but getting here 12 hours early. And what a fish that is. 18 pound 2 ounces. Look how fat it is. Last week of the season. I am well chuffed with that.
Although we haven't fished together for other species, I know Dave fishes for everything and he's really good at it across the board.
Like, that is just incredible. Honestly.
If he's got something in his head, he does not give up and he will just keep going and going until he's achieved it. I mean, he's caught mega species of epic proportions, all different species, including monster perch, barbel, etc., as you've seen. But yeah, his energy and drive is just, I couldn't do it.
I've always been very much an all or nothing type. I don't like dipping my toes. I think they're all a little bit like that, to be fair. Like anyone that's pursued their fishing, whether it's carp fishing, whether it's other species, they kind of, nothing else kind of gets in the way. So if I'm going to do something, I've got to do it properly. And if for some reason I think I can't give my fishing or anything else for that matter 100%, I just won't do it. So the day that I can't get up out of bed and go and bait up on the way to work and leave 3 hours early, etc., I just feel as if I'd be a little bit past it. Everything I've always done, I've always given everything. Hang on, let me sort my tangle out before you film me.
I first started thinking about big perch fishing probably over 10 years ago now. Seeing photos of Terry's big perch, and I worked with Nick Hellier at the time, and he used to always talk about Tedderton and how great the Thames was, and that these fish were just amazing and of epic proportions. Like, you just have to catch one to really appreciate one. And it kind of made sense, really. Is where I grew up in London, there's not much carp fishing and winter venues. You always have to plan that.
Let's do this.
Getting my head into some perch fishing and predator fishing, it gave me something to do during the sort of colder periods and something to look forward to. So that was the beginning of it for me, was really hearing about them glory days on the Thames and how good it was, and trying to find my own mega fishing, really.
He's got one, get ready, boys. Nah, what happened? I felt it, I see it through the rod, I felt it and I weren't even holding the rod. That was 100% a whack, mate. I see your body, mate, I see your body shake when the tip went. Yeah, you felt it and it went.
When was the last time I caught a big perch? I mean, probably a couple of months back. Had a 4 pound 5 from a reservoir, a new venue as well. That was really exciting. But I haven't done much perch fishing. In the last few weeks, I've been more carp fishing, so it's prime time. The rivers are in great condition, and it's a beautiful time to get out here with Dave as well, my good friend. So yeah, just missed one. Just dropped the bait, so I'm going to get another bait on, get the rod back out there. The day's still young.
My inspiration when it comes to the perch fishing, realistically, my mate Stuart, his dad actually had a boat up in Cambridge, and that was the first time we actually really specifically targeted them. And we'd go then, I remember we'd sit on the end of the jetty and we'd all drop her out a load of worm, but realistically I always thought that we were like miles away from a big one, and you'd see obviously in the press like all these big threes and scraper fours, and I always thought, wow, like one day I'm going to find out where these are. And after a few years, like you see people like Terry and Alfie, etc., popping up with these 3-pounders. And I always think, like, where are they? And obviously, with a bit of digging, it turns out that these real giants, they're in the rivers with the crayfish, and we've never had crayfish in Cambridge. It's never been a thing, and realistically, a scraper 3 in Cambridge is a big fish. And it turns out that down in the Lee Valley and on the Thames, etc., they get a lot bigger. Yeah, we went to places that we thought potentially would be good for perch rather than places that we knew had big perch. And it wasn't really until maybe 2016 where I caught my first 3-pounder, and that was actually from a spot we went to on the corner with the boats, and it was actually my first 3-pounder was 312, and I'll never ever forget that. It was like the difference between a 212 and a 312 for me is the same as between a 30-pound carp and a 40-pound carp. It's almost a completely different species all on its own, you know. It really is like, yeah, and it carries on like that. I can imagine the difference between a 312 and a 412 is that jump again, and then when you get into 5s, it's a whole nother kettle of fish. The boats that we're casting over the back, one of them's just decided to come out, and he's caused a right mess. There's all dead leaves and reeds and that all over the top, and he's right churned the bottom up. We can see all the muddy water. Normally, you'd think that they would have ruined it, but I think that all the bait fish might have a small party, and we might be in with a chance.
The first perch venues I fished, you'd think that I'd probably travel to the Thames hearing so much about it, but I actually started fishing on the Lee and tributaries of the Lee for my perch. Me and my good friend Dan, we sort of used to go perch fishing all the time together during the early days, fishing on small rivers and on the Lee. And to be fair, we was pretty successful. I remember the first session that we done ever perch fishing, I was lucky enough to catch my first monster perch, and from then, looking back at it now, we got the weigh-in wrong. I would never claim a fish was bigger than what it was, but I'm pretty sure I've got photos of it somewhere, some prints, so I'll send you one. I'm sure it was like mid-5. It was like 2.3 kilos, but I read it as pounds at the time. Yeah, absolutely incredible. The fish was enormous. I just remember him being on the phone and playing this fish under this small bridge, and just adamant it was a pike, and it come out just these massive head shakes in this clear water, this small stream. It was amazing, and ever since then, I think, yeah, it was about 12 years ago, I've just been addicted.
So the young me always used to say, you've always got a chance, you've always got a chance. Like, it doesn't matter if my minnow goes in front of a perch, it's going to eat it. But what I've actually learned in recent years, what I've been told in recent years by people that are a little bit more realistic, people like Ollie Davies, he will always say that water temperature is really, really important, whether it's barbel, whether it's chub, or in this case perch. It can literally be as simple as a light switch. Some days, whether or not it's to do with light levels or water temperatures, some days it's on and some days it's off. But the majority of the time, unless you're going early or late, it's normally off. Like, I used to go in January all the time when there was frost on the floor, and we used to just think we blanked because we didn't actually get them, like we didn't get anywhere near any fish, but realistically, they were probably just sat on the floor having a hard time. Well, recently I've actually got a young family, which I'm 100% dedicated to, and I've since had to get a full-time job, and we've had to get our own place, etc., etc. I've had to, I think they call it real life. I wouldn't change it for the world, but what I had to do was I had to sort of tailor my fishing around my work and my family, so it meant that I had to turn nocturnal. Like, I basically, if I don't fish at night, I don't fish at all. And it's been, to be fair, this trip that we've just had now is the first time I've actually seen the river in the daylight. I want to say this season. She'll probably say, you done a Sunday in November, but most of the time that I'm fishing now, it's in the dark, which it's nice because obviously everything quietens down, and a lot of the places that I fish are built up areas, etc. So I kind of get my space and my time, but I've kind of tailored my fishing to be a lot shorter, but still with a lot of regularity now. I still fish 2 or 3 nights a week, but only from 8 p.m. till 6 a.m.
Just like Dave, I've got a lovely young family, and we both fish, live and breathe fishing, but in totally different concepts. I do a lot of day fishing. I mean, if I could pick a number off my head, I'd probably do 20 to 30 nights fishing in the year, whereas I'll do a number of days. Most days I'll be fishing or doing something to do with fishing, and Dave's more nocturnal, he's the other way round. So when we get to meet up in and amongst our fishing lives and our family lives, it's actually quite special. We don't meet up much, so when we're out, especially in the daytime, having a good time fishing together, it's actually really nice to find a balance and find the time to fish together.
I should have put the lid on properly. So if we fast forward, God knows how many years, to 2023, I had actually spent a lot of time in the valley, and I kind of worked out where I needed to be and where I didn't. And there was one particular lake where a friend actually lived nearby, and we'd walk around it and he'd say to me, "Trust me, mate, there's always the same stories every year, there's always the same stuff." But you know what it's like with stories? I always say to people, like, rather than saying the other year, I always go, what date was it? Because normally they're 10, 12 years old stories. So I started lapping this lake, and it wasn't really until March, really, where I started to see them. And I remember seeing the first one, and this was in the daytime. At the time, I actually had a bit more time than what I do now. In recent years, I've had to sort of tailor it around work overnighters, which isn't ideal for perches, I'm sure you're all aware. But I actually had this one trip where I'd go down in the evening, do several laps of this big pit, see very little, and for some weird reason, I remember just staying on into dark and walking around with a head torch, and the whole margin just completely come to life. Like, it was almost like, it's crystal clear, like 10 out of 10 clarity, and you'd walk around in the daytime and you would not see even a bleak, you know, it was completely dead of life. And I'm saying, like, you can see like 17, 18 foot down into the abyss, like not a single thing. And I remember having a coffee, and I'd done another lap. I actually had a friend with me at the time. And the first swim we walked into, I remember turning my head torch on, and there was tiny perch, little crayfish, tiny little jackpike shooting out the edge. And it was almost like everything come out the depths up onto the shelves at night. And it didn't take half a lap until I thought, I might have cracked it here. This might be what I need. And all their food had come up onto the shelves. Maybe they're going to follow. After locating these perch, I remember we'd done 3 or 4 laps of the lake, and it was late at this point, and we stumbled across this fish. And I remember, I'm like shaking at the time. We're looking at this fish under the head torch. I've clocked where it is. I've turned the head torch off, turned my back, and I remember like shaking, putting these like 3 dendrobinas on this size 6 hook, and I've lowered it down on top of it like that, and I've put this worm, bearing in mind it's like 9, 10 foot of water, crystal clear. I've lowered this dendrobina down onto its nose, and as soon as it's in place, I've turned my head torch off, and I've sat there like that holding the line. And nothing's happened for a period of time anyway. So I've turned my head torch back on, and he's moved a foot. He's now like facing a different way. I'm thinking, hang on a minute. So I've like redone it. I've put it in front of me, turned it off. And my mate goes to me, he goes, "Leave the head torch on." I'm like, they're never going to eat that. And there's no way they're going to eat that worm under the torch. Not a chance. Anyway, so I've lowered it back down like that. And he's like, and we're watching him, and he's like flared up. I've watched his gills going like this. He's sort of, and my mate's going, "Oh my God. Oh my God, oh my God." And he is literally, he was like a bass, you know, when they flare up their mouth. His mouth must have opened like 2 Coke cans, you know, huge thing. And yeah, and as it's coming up, like, it starts as a 2-pounder, and as you're beasting it up out the depths, like I say, it's about 9 foot, and it's like 2.5 pound, 3.5 pound, 4.5 pound, and when it gets to the top, mate, my mate's like got the net, and he's like going, "Oh my God." And this thing, it was like a bass, mate, yeah, and it was 5 pound 4 ounces, and I'll be honest, like, it was the first time. I've always weighed my perch in the carrier bag, and it was the first time where I felt as if I needed a weigh sling. So eventually, when a friend of mine, Callum, arrived in the morning, Jace disappeared to work. I had him all pinned out in this huge carp net, swimming around in circles, and I'm pacing around like a caged animal. And my mate turns up, and I hadn't actually weighed him at this point, and he goes, "What, you're mad? Like, have you not weighed them? What if they cough up 3 crayfish, you know?" Like, obviously I know it happens with carp, with crapping it out in the net, etc. I didn't even think, like, I'd known that obviously I had one 5-pounder, the other one looked the same to me, and I remember getting them on the bank and he was like, right, weigh them. The first one was still 5'4", the same as one before, and this other one was 5'2". And I remember picking them up for the picture. I've actually got a photo of them on the mat before I picked them up, and the mat was so full. You know when you see these pictures of these perch and they're next to, say, a set of scales? This particular picture, the set of scales looked like a bloody matchbox, you know? Like normally they're like the same size as the perch. Honestly, like it was probably, at the time, it was probably the highlight of my fishing, and probably still is the rarest nights fishing I've probably ever had. Well, it's been slow on the old perch front, but that's all part of dealing with wild animals, I suppose. And look at this, the river has given me back something for my efforts, once again. Oh wow, look at that. One of the old guards, mega. Well, have a look at that. It might not be a perch, but it's still a big one from the lee. 17.10, that is. And that is my 6th fish over 17 pound this season. I'm made up with that. And if that's the last fish of the season I catch, I will not be disappointed. That brace of perch was actually the last couple of days of March. I won't forget it because it's around my birthday. And I thought to myself, wow, like I've got obviously a bonus Drennan award early. I was thinking to myself, wow, like bearing in mind it's the close season for most anglers, you know, like I'm one step ahead. I don't do the tench fishing, I don't do the bream fishing because it reminds me too much of carp fishing, and I don't really get that kind of time anymore. You kind of need a few nights a week, but that's a completely different story altogether. Yeah, the tench and the bream require a bit more time than what I've got, so it was a case of what could I fish for where maybe my baiting and my regularity would pay off rather than just rotting in a swim. So the next one was the rudd, and I caught a brace of 3-pound rudd. I'm going to skip over that because we'll save that for another time. So I actually had 2 awards before the end of April, if I remember rightly, and I remember someone saying to me, I can't remember whether it was Angling Times or what, but someone said to me like, you're the only one with 2 awards, and it kind of fueled the fire. Like, I don't like to say that I went fishing that year for the Drennan Cup, but I kind of did after that. Like, I had my 2 awards and I thought, wow, like there's actually a chance, you know? So when the position I was in at the end of April, I was actually miles ahead, but because of the eels, which seems to be a bit of a common theme throughout the warmer months, it kind of run away with me a little bit. I'd done a lot of time fishing some of these big lakes for the eels, and realistically I probably should have gone somewhere a little bit smaller and a little bit easier. I feel as if the eels were a big commitment and it was time that I just didn't have. I actually ended up coming 4th at the end of the season, which of course I was chuffed about. Like, I only got 3 awards, and I think it was won by Dan, wasn't it, with 6 awards, 7 awards. I should really know this, but yeah, it ran away with me. So I was miles ahead, but ended 4th, which I'm going to pretend I'm happy about, but I'm not. Well, I love a new species, and that is my first banana skin. And I've lassoed him. Oh, get it back quickly.
Some of my most memorable perch fishing highlights over the years, it has to be that first giant that I caught. Mega. Since then, I've just been super, super hooked. And during them colder months, I always visited that stream. And another mega memory was when I had an epic hit of perch. I fished 2 afternoons on the bounce, and I managed to catch 18 fish. I had the smallest was £2.14. I had 4 4s to 4 6, and all the rest were like £3 to £3.15. From such a small chalk stream, it was yeah, unheard of, and certainly a mega highlight.
How big was he, Al?
Well, it was bouncing sort of between 4 and 315, so 315 and a half. We'll settle for that. Very close, and for a river perch in early autumn. What are we? Mid-September. It's a monster. Come spawning time, he'd be well into £4. In more recent years, I would say that the highlights of my perch fishing have been sort of a milestone above some of my previous captures. I targeted some unknown waters, still waters. I moved on from the rivers and come across some mega perch. I mean, I never ever dreamt of perch this big, but a highlight was one winter, January, I'm pretty sure, around 4 years ago. I had a £5 3-ounce perch from a 400-acre reservoir, untouched, and some virgin fishing, and it was just incredible. I will never forget that. Been chasing perch for years and years, but a fish like this makes you feel sick saying it. But £5 3 ounces on a leopard live bait from a untouched water. This is the reason why fish like this exist, and it's just a privilege to see something like this in your lifetime, let alone to hold one yourself. But I'm gonna get it back now because it's obviously an old fish, and I want to let it live on forever. So thank you. With monster perch on the brain and kind of ticking away where really I would top that £5 3-ounce monster, I started to look more towards the still waters and somewhere that would have potential of a personal best. There was another small still water not too far from me, and I knew it had good form of doing big perch in the past, but where I'd been focusing on the other water, I kind of thought that it had come to an end. Perch don't live too long, so it's really important that you strike whilst the iron's hot. 4 £5 fish, they haven't really got long left. And I thought I'll have a little go and do a few trips with friends, as you do. And again, January, a couple years back, I fished the still water and managed another Leviathan at £5 1 ounce, I'm sure that fish was. And different to the last, it was shorter, but just really fat. But never would I ever dream of catching one, let alone 2 £5 plus perch in my lifetime. You wouldn't believe it, an absolute giant. £5 and half an ounce, my second £5 perch from the UK. And I feel sick, just like I did that day when a big one followed my lure in the snow. Yeah, I can't speak. An early Christmas present, and I'm sure this was that fish from the other day. I don't want to keep him out too long, so I'm going to get him back. And yeah, I'm lost for words. What a magnificent fish, and truly, truly special. Got a few hours this evening, going to be fishing a nice new spot on the river. Unfortunately, Dave can't make it today. He's not feeling too well. So I'm going to try my best, solo a bolo, to catch a decent perch for you guys. Let's give it a go. There you go. Not quite the 3 pound. He's only an upper 2, but I'm gonna get him back now. Nice start. Might catch a bigger one. I'll give it a go for the last hour, but certainly chuffed with him. My perch fishing, it really depends on what the weather's doing from year to year, but I would say the best time of year to start would be late autumn. Still decent day temperatures, but the night temps have fallen. There's still plenty of oxygen now in the river, and the perch is still active. Like most species during the cold winters, they do slow down. So as you sort of get throughout the colder months, more towards Christmas, January, February, it does get harder. But the easier times of year when they're still active would be late autumn. But personally, when I'm trying to target absolute giants, I will fish January to March, depending on weather, and that's the time of year where the perch will start to really get on the feed, put a little bit of spawn on, and be at their biggest.